The wind blew gently through the broken window, carrying dust and silence into the dark room. There was no sound of laughter, no baby crying, no soft cooing anymore. Just a soft, broken voice humming a lullaby that had not been sung in weeks. Jayla sat on the floor, legs folded beneath her, eyes locked on the small cradle in the corner. It was made of carved stone wood, once painted with warm colors, now chipped and faded inside the cradle. Only a torn blanket remained, pink, soft, and holding the faint smell of her daughter, she sang quietly, her voice shaking, sometimes stopping when her throat closed up from pain. Her fingers trembled as they held a small stuffed animal, its ear missing, its fur stiff with dried tears. "I used to sing this to you when you couldn't sleep," she whispered to the empty air. No one came to this part of the colony anymore. After the war between houses, the outer blocks were abandoned, burned and left to rot. Jayla stayed because here was the last place her baby had smiled, had giggled, had slept. She had lost everything in the raid. The soldiers stormed in, searching for hidden weapons. But they took more than that. They took her daughter. She had screamed, fought, begged until one soldier struck her across the head. When she woke up, the cradle was empty. The local council refused to help. War creates chaos, they said. Maybe the child was taken by rebels, maybe sold. They didn't care, because Jayla was just a poor woman from the lower castes. Just one more voice crying into the void, but she hadn't stopped searching. Every day she walked the ruined markets, talked to wandering traders. She even gave away her last pieces of jewelry for rumors. Nothing came back, not a single clue. Now she had no food left, no coin, no family. Just the cradle, the blanket, and her voice. She sang again, softer this time. "If you're cold, I'll warm you. If you're scared, I'll hold you." Her eyes closed as she leaned forward, pressing her forehead against the cradle's side. "I'm so sorry, my love," she whispered. "Mama failed you." And then she broke. Tears spilled down her cheeks, her body shaking. She didn't scream, didn't shout. She just cried in silence. The wind pushed open the broken door with a creak. Jayla didn't move. She thought it was the wind again, or maybe a scavenger animal. But then she heard something else, boots, soft but steady, footsteps getting closer, her body tensed, fear running through her bones. She slowly turned her head. A figure stood at the door, backlit by the dying sun, a tall man in a long brown coat, dust covering his boots and shoulders. He held something in his arms, wrapped in cloth. He stepped forward, gently, not speaking. Jayla rose to her knees, unsure whether to run or scream. "Who are you?" she whispered. The man knelt in front of her, still silent. He placed the bundle on the floor between them. She stared at it, ready to strike if it moved. But it didn't. Instead, he unwrapped a corner of the cloth. Revealing a small toy, Jayla gasped. It was her daughter's toy. A spinning rattle with red beads, custom made by her late husband. No one else could have one like it. She reached out with shaking hands, grabbing it, holding it to her chest. "Where did you get this?" she demanded, her voice sharp now. The man looked up, his face tired, his eyes soft. "I found it," he said, "on a transport ship docked at a smuggler station." He paused, then added, "I think your daughter's alive." Jayla froze. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Her heart beat so loudly she thought it might burst. "You're lying," she whispered. "No," he said. "I saw cages. Small ones. Full of children." His voice cracked with guilt. "I couldn't help them all, but I grabbed this." Jayla clutched the toy like it was life itself. Tears returned, but now mixed with a spark of something she had forgotten. "Hope, why?" she asked. "Why would a human care?" The man didn't answer right away. He stood up slowly and looked around the ruined room. "I've lost people too," he said, "and I couldn't save them." He looked down at her again. "But maybe I can save her." Jayla looked at the cradle, then at the man. She didn't know who he was, but for the first time in months, someone had stepped inside, not to steal, not to kill, not to ignore, but to bring her a piece of her child, and a reason to stand up again. Jayla sat frozen, her fingers gripping the old toy like it was a living thing. The human knelt beside her, silent, watching her with calm but tired eyes. Outside, the wind howled through the broken buildings, but inside the room there was only silence. Heavy, powerful silence. The kind that comes just before a soul changes forever. Jayla studied the man in front of her. He was taller than most of her people. With skin tanned by many suns, his coat was torn at the edges. His boots worn from long journeys, but his face. It was strange, not cruel, not cold like the soldiers who took her daughter. His eyes looked tired, yes, but kind, and something else too, guilt. He stood slowly and stepped back, giving her space. "I didn't come to hurt you," he said, his voice low. Jayla didn't reply. Her body still trembled from what he told her. Her daughter, alive? No, that was too much, too dangerous to believe, and yet, the toy in her hand was real, not a dream, not a trick. "What's your name?" she asked finally, her voice rough. The man hesitated, then said, "Elias, I don't trust you," she whispered. He nodded. "You don't have to." She looked up, her eyes sharp. "But you brought me her toy." Elias stepped toward the cracked table and placed a small data chip onto the surface. "I copied a cargo manifest from the smuggler's station," he explained. "Several children were taken from war zones, sold to off-world labor mines or nobles." Jayla's heart twisted. "Nobles?" She echoed, her voice rising. "Like property." Elias clenched his jaw. "Yes," he said. "They call it adoption on paper, but they pay in credits." Jayla fell silent again. The cradle in the corner still looked empty. But in her mind something stirred, rage for months. She had begged and cried and searched. Now a stranger, a human, had done more than her entire government. Why? "You're not one of us," she said slowly. "Why would you risk all this for someone like me?" Elias looked at her with haunted eyes. "Because I didn't risk it before," he said. "I used to be part of it." Jayla's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" "I ran security for a cargo ship," Elias said quietly. "I told myself I didn't know what was inside those crates. But one day, one broke open." He looked away, his voice thick. "There was a child inside," Jayla gasped, her hand rising to her mouth. "I quit the next day," he said. "And I've been trying to fix it ever since." The words hung between them. Heavy like chains, Jayla stared at him, trying to see the monster he claimed to be. But all she saw was a man full of pain. A man trying to change the end of a story he helped begin. "I think your daughter was taken to the Sereth system," Elias said. "It's a mining moon, small, forgotten. No law. She's there?" Jayla whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know for sure," he said. "But I saw a girl, small, pale, crying. She was holding this." He pointed to the toy. "Wouldn't let go of it." Jayla closed her eyes. She could almost hear her baby's giggle, see her tiny hands. Something deep in her chest sparked. Hope. Terrifying, fragile, but alive. Elias turned to the door. "I'm leaving at first light," he said. "If you want to come, be ready." Jayla stared at him, her heart pounding. "You'd let me come with you?" "Of course," he said. "She's your daughter." The words hit her like thunder. So simple, so obvious, and yet no one else had said them. Not the guards, not the leaders, not even her neighbors, only this human. This stranger with tired eyes and a heavy past. As he stepped outside, the sky behind him was dark purple, stars beginning to shine through the cracks of twilight. Jayla stood slowly, clutching the toy. She walked to the cradle and placed the toy back inside. Then she whispered, "I'm coming for you." Little star. That night she didn't sleep. She cleaned the dust off her daughter's blanket, packed what little she had left, and stared at the stars for the first time in months. She wasn't singing to the cradle. She was singing to the future, and in the shadows of the night, a human waited, ready to walk with her into the fire. The sun rose slowly over the broken colony, painting the ruins with gold and red. Jayla stood near the edge of the broken wall, her small satchel tied across her chest. She wore her husband's old traveling cloak. It was too large but warm. Inside her bag, wrapped in cloth, was the tiny toy rattle, her daughter's last known possession. Elias waited beside an old sky bike, dust-covered but still working. He handed Jayla a small water pack and nodded without a word. She took it, their eyes meeting briefly. There was no need for a long speech. They were already bound by the same mission: find her child, or die trying. The road out of the colony was dry and cracked. Abandoned vehicles rusted along the path, their wheels buried in sand as they drove deeper into the wasteland. Silence sat between them, not awkward silence, but heavy, thoughtful silence. Jayla broke it first. "You said you saw her," she said. Her voice uncertain. Elias didn't look at her, his hands gripping the controls. "I saw a girl," he replied. "Held the toy like her life depended on it." Jayla nodded, her fingers tightening around the satchel strap. "That sounds like her," she whispered. "She always held it when she was scared." They traveled for hours. past cracked stone canyons and hollow hills. Nothing moved in the desert except the wind and the occasional sand beetle. Elias finally pulled the sky bike into the shade of an old fuel station ruin. "We'll rest here before we cross the flats," he said. Too hot in open sand during midday, Jayla slid off the bike and sat on a chunk of broken stone. She wiped sweat from her brow and took a sip of water. "You know the smugglers will kill us if they find us," she said quietly. Elias nodded. "They won't find us." She raised an eyebrow. "You sound confident." He smirked slightly. "I've stolen from them before and lived." There was a small fire pit in the station corner. Long unused, Elias lit it and dropped a small meal pack into the heat to warm. Jayla watched him, noticing how skilled his hands were. Fast, careful, quiet, like a man who had survived too many close calls. As they ate in silence, she finally asked, "Did you ever have children?" Elias didn't answer at first, then he said, "I almost did." Jayla blinked, unsure how to respond. He continued, voice low, "She died before birth. My wife too." Jayla looked away, ashamed she had asked. "I'm sorry," she said. He shook his head. "It's why I'm here." That night they slept beneath the stars. Using old metal scraps for shelter, Jayla stared up at the sky, tracing the stars her daughter loved. "Which one are you under, my baby?" She whispered. "Is someone hurting you? Are you crying?" She closed her eyes and held the toy tight in the morning. The flats greeted them like a burning ocean. No shade, no hills, just endless shimmering sand. They walked now, the bike hidden behind them. Too risky to ride where smugglers flew patrol drones. Each step in the sand was hot, slow, and silent. Jayla's feet ached, her lips dried, but she didn't stop. Not when she thought of that tiny cry Elias heard. Not when she remembered the warmth of her baby's body at night. Elias walked ahead, checking his tracker for old tunnels. "There," he pointed, "a smuggler vent system. Leads under the mining station." Jayla stared at the barely visible hatch. "Half buried in sand, are you sure?" "I've used it before," he said. "They won't expect us there." They cleared the sand away and pried open the hatch. Cool air rushed out, filled with oil and rust and something bitter. Fear. Elias climbed down first, then helped Jayla in. The ladder creaked under their weight. But held inside the tunnel was narrow and dim. Lights flickered along the ceiling, casting long shadows. The air buzzed with low machinery hums. Elias whispered, "We're inside now." Beneath the main yard, Jayla felt her knees weaken. She was here, closer to her daughter than she had been in weeks. But also closer to danger. She turned to Elias, her voice shaking. "If she's here, I'll do anything to get her back." Elias looked at her, and for the first time placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "We'll find her," he said, "no matter what." They moved forward into the darkness, the sound of distant footsteps echoing above. Behind them, only footprints in the sand remained. But ahead, pain, danger, and maybe her daughter. The tunnel grew colder the deeper they went. Jayla held the wall as they moved, her fingers brushing rusted pipes and peeling metal. Her heart beat faster with every step. The air smelled of oil, sweat, and something worse, something like fear that had no sound, no shape. Elias motioned for her to stop. He crouched low and pressed a small device to the wall. It crackled softly and began to pick up voices through the metal. "Shipment ready by sundown. Units from the outer colonies. Don't let the kids make noise this time." Jayla covered her mouth, her stomach twisting. "Children," she whispered. "They're still here." Elias nodded grimly. "That confirms it." They moved forward again until they reached a metal grate above them. Elias pulled her down beside him and pointed through the gaps. She looked and froze. Above them was a massive room lit by hanging yellow lights. The floor was covered in cages. Not big enough for comfort, not strong enough for safety. Each cage held 2 or 3 children, thin, shaking, silent. Their eyes were wide, some red from crying, others too tired to weep. Jayla's breath caught in her throat. One little girl clutched something in her hands, a scrap of cloth, pink and worn. Jayla leaned closer, heart thudding louder. "She's here," she whispered, her voice cracking. Elias looked, then back at Jayla. "Are you sure?" Jayla nodded slowly. "That's her blanket." The child sat near the far wall, curled in a tight ball. Her dark hair was messy, her skin dusty. But her eyes... Jayla knew those eyes. "That's my daughter," she said. Barely able to speak the words, her knees gave out. And she clutched the metal grate, sobbing quietly. Elias stayed close, not touching her but guarding her. I want to break through right now, she said. Fire rising in her voice, Elias shook his head. Too risky. Then what do we do? We find a way in quietly. Jayla wiped her tears and looked again. 2 guards walked between the cages. One slapped a crying boy with the back of his glove. Another kicked a cage and laughed. Jayla's hands clenched into fists. Monsters, she growled. Elias pulled out a small hollow map. There's a vent shaft on the right wall near the girl's cage, he said. It connects to the storage bay. We can sneak in that way. They crawled along the vent pipes. Quiet as ghosts, Jayla's heart pounded louder than her footsteps. Her hands bled from the sharp edges, but she didn't stop. Not now. Not when she could almost hear her baby's breath. They reached a grate near the storage bay and waited for the guards to pass. Then Elias dropped down first and helped Jayla through. They crept through crates and shadows until they were behind the row of cages. Jayla's eyes never left the girl in the corner. She's right there, she whispered. Her voice shaking, Elias nodded. We need to be fast. Once we open that cage, all hell will break loose. I'm ready, she said. I'll carry her, I'll run. Just get me close enough. Elias moved ahead to disable the security lock on the far wall. Jayla waited in the shadows, holding her breath. Suddenly, a soft humming filled the room. Jayla's heart stopped. The girl, her daughter, had started to hum. It was the lullaby. The same lullaby Jayla sang every night before the raid. Soft, broken, but real. Tears filled Jayla's eyes. She remembers, she whispered, covering her mouth. She remembers me, but then a guard stopped and looked toward the cage. Shut up, he barked, stomping closer. Jayla moved without thinking. She stepped from the shadows, rage in her chest. Don't you touch her, she hissed. The guard froze, shocked by the sudden appearance. Before he could react, Elias tackled him from the side. They crashed to the ground. Fists flying, children screamed, alarms blared, red lights flashing across the room. Jayla ran toward the cage, her daughter staring in shock. She yanked at the lock, but it wouldn't budge. Elias tossed her the guard's keycard, shouting, now! She swiped the card, click. The door popped open. She dropped to her knees and pulled her daughter into her arms. The girl clung to her, eyes wide. Are you Mama? She whispered. Jayla held her tight, tears soaking the child's hair. Yes, baby, yes. I'm here, but the moment was short. More guards were coming, footsteps thundered above them. Elias grabbed a plasma stick and blocked the hallway. Go, he shouted. Take her and run. Jayla hesitated. But her daughter's hand squeezed hers. She turned and ran into the maze of crates, heart racing behind her. She heard Elias roar like a beast, fighting to give them time. And in her arms, for the first time in weeks, her child breathed against her chest. She wasn't dreaming. She was holding her again. The hallway shook as a blast went off near the entrance. Dust fell from the ceiling and children screamed from their cages. Jayla didn't look back. She held her daughter tight, her legs moving on pure instinct. The girl clung to her chest, face buried in her mother's cloak. Don't let them take me again, she whispered, barely loud enough to hear. Jayla's heart cracked. Never, she breathed, never again behind them. The sound of fighting echoed louder. Elias was still battling, his voice roared through the corridors, mixed with grunts, shouts, and the clang of metal. Jayla turned a corner and nearly slipped. The floor was covered in oil, crates, and pieces of broken machinery. She didn't stop. She couldn't, one wrong turn, and they'd both be caught. She ducked under a pipe, then turned left toward the smuggler hangar. That was the way out, the only way. But then she heard it, a cry. Not her daughter's, but a different child. Soft, high-pitched, full of pain. Jayla froze, her arms tightening around her own girl. More cries followed. Dozens of voices, young and scared, calling for help. The children, still trapped in cages. Still waiting, she turned back, eyes wide. I can't leave them, she whispered. Her daughter looked up at her. The child's lips trembled, but she nodded. Mama, help them, she said softly. Please. Jayla blinked away tears and turned back around. She ran to a corner of the bay where emergency controls were mounted. Her fingers flew across the buttons, trying codes, swiping the guard's card. Red lights flashed, but then click, click. Clicks and the locks disengaged, one by one. Cage doors swung open. Small children peeked out, blinking in confusion. One brave boy stepped forward, rubbing his eyes. Are we free? He asked. Jayla nodded, her voice shaking. Yes. Run, hide if you have to, follow this tunnel. And don't stop. She pointed to the vent Elias had used earlier. Children began to scatter, helping each other, holding hands. Running for light, Jayla turned to leave, but one small girl tugged her sleeve. "Miss," she whispered, "one boy. He's still inside." The guards locked him in the supply room. Jayla looked down the hallway, back toward danger. She hesitated just for a moment. Then she handed her daughter to an older girl. "Hold her," she said. "Don't let go unless I return." Her daughter reached out, crying softly, "Mama." "Don't go," Jayla kissed her forehead. "I'll come back. I promise." She ran down the corridor. Weaving between shadows and sparks, one guard turned and shouted, but she ducked and kicked him in the leg. He fell with a grunt, and she grabbed his passcode ring. She reached the supply room door and scanned it. Green light. Door unlocked. Inside, a small boy sat curled against the wall. His eyes were red and his lip was bleeding. Jayla dropped beside him. "It's okay. I've got you," she said gently. The boy stared at her in disbelief. "You're not a guard." "No," she smiled softly. "I'm a mother." She lifted him up and carried him through the smoke. Alarms screamed from all directions now. The structure was shaking. Something had been damaged deeply. When she reached the hangar, her daughter ran toward her. The girl wrapped her arms around her legs. Crying, Jayla held both children close. "It's almost over," she whispered. Almost. But then came a new sound. Heavier. Crueler. Boots. Big. Armored, stomping with purpose, Jayla turned slowly, shielding the children with her body. A tall alien smuggler with glowing cybernetics stepped forward, weapon in hand. "No one escapes," he said coldly. Jayla's heart pounded. She looked around. No weapons. No exits. Nowhere to run. Then a roar from the smoke behind them. Elias burst forward, bloodied and limping. He held a pipe like a sword, fire in his eyes. "You want them?" he growled. "You'll have to go through me." The smuggler laughed. "Gladly," they charged. Metal against metal, fists against bone. Jayla could only watch, clutching the children, whispering prayers. Elias took hit after hit but didn't fall. He blocked a blast meant for Jayla with his own body. He struck the smuggler in the face, cracking one of his glowing eyes, then silence. The smuggler collapsed unconscious. Elias fell to his knees. Bleeding, breathing hard, Jayla rushed to him. "You're hurt," she said. Panicked, he looked up at her, a tired smile on his lips. "Still breathing," he whispered. "Didn't come this far to quit now." She helped him up, and together, they limped toward the escape shuttle. Children followed, small hands clinging to hope. As they lifted off, Jayla held her daughter close again. The little girl looked up and whispered, "Mama, I heard you singing." Jayla smiled with tears in her eyes. "I never stopped," she said. "I sang to you every night, and now—" Her voice, once singing to an empty cradle, was answered by the sound of her child's cry. Smoke rose from the smuggler base as the shuttle flew higher into the sky. Jayla held her daughter tightly, one hand resting on the girl's back, the other gripping Elias's wrist. The inside of the shuttle was small and shaking, metal walls creaking with each burst of speed. But they were free. For now, children huddled together on the floor, holding hands, whispering to one another. Jayla looked at Elias, who leaned against the wall. Bleeding from his side, his face was pale, lips pressed together to hide the pain. "You're hurt badly," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "I've been worse." She didn't believe him. But she didn't argue. They didn't have time for arguments anymore. The shuttle beeped, lights flashing red. "Fuel cells low," the system warned. "Crash landing probable." Jayla's stomach turned. "Can we make it to the surface?" she asked. Elias dragged himself to the pilot seat and tapped quickly on the screen. "There's a dry plateau just west of here," he said. "We can land there, but it won't be smooth." He turned to the children. "Everyone, hold on to something and stay down," he said. Jayla helped the little ones grip the walls and each other. Then she knelt beside Elias, her daughter in her lap. The shuttle shook violently as it descended. Winds howled outside and the engines groaned. The world outside spun, sky to sand to sky again, then crash. The shuttle slammed into the ground with a thunderous impact. Metal screaming as it skidded, sparks flew. The walls dented inward, and children cried out in fear. Then stillness, dust filled the air, and Jayla coughed, shielding her child. She looked around quickly, counting heads. Everyone was alive. Bruised but breathing, but Elias. He was slumped forward, a large beam having fallen across his shoulder. "Elias," she shouted, crawling to him. He groaned, eyes fluttering open. "I'm fine," he said weakly. "You're not fine," she replied, her hands trying to lift the beam. He placed a hand on hers. "Get them out first," he said. "You have to lead them now." Jayla nodded, her heart racing. She opened the hatch and guided the children out into the daylight. The sky above was soft orange. The wind dry and warm. Far in the distance, she saw city towers, small but reachable. Once all the children were safe, she ran back into the shuttle. Elias was still pinned, blood seeping from his side. She grabbed a metal bar and wedged it under the beam. Using all her strength, her arms shook, her body screamed, but she didn't stop. Then with a groan, the beam rolled to the side. Elias collapsed to the floor, gasping. Jayla knelt beside him, wiping blood from his face. "Why did you do this?" she asked softly. He looked at her, eyes unfocused. "Because someone had to," he whispered. She helped him outside. One arm wrapped around his waist, the children ran to them, surrounding Elias like a hero returning from battle. He looked down at them and smiled weakly. "You're safe now," he said. "That's all that matters." They made a camp under an old metal shelter nearby. Jayla cleaned Elias's wounds as best she could, using scraps of cloth and water from the emergency pack. Her daughter sat nearby, humming the lullaby again, this time without fear. Night fell, and stars filled the sky. Elias lay beside the fire, eyes half closed. Jayla sat beside him, holding his hand. "I didn't believe in humans," she said quietly. "Not after what we suffered," he smiled faintly. "Most don't. But then you came," she whispered. "You brought me back my heart." Elias turned his head slowly, looking at her. "You brought her back to life," he said. "You fought harder than anyone I've ever known." Jayla looked at her daughter, sleeping peacefully in a blanket beside the fire. "She's my whole world," she said, "and now she's safe." "Because of you," Elias coughed, pain flashing across his face. "I don't think I'll make it to the city," he said. "I'm sorry." Jayla leaned closer, her voice firm. "You're not dying here," she said. "You held the sky back for us. I won't let it crush you now." She stood and looked at the children. "We need a stretcher," she said. "We carry him together." The older ones nodded without hesitation. They gathered pieces of the shuttle's door, wrapped cloth around it, and together, they lifted Elias, step by step, mile by mile, across the silent land. As they walked under the stars, Jayla sang again. But this time, not to an empty cradle, not in mourning, but in hope. And the man who held the sky back with his bare hands, he was carried not just by arms, but by hearts that would remember him forever. The walk to the city took 2 days. Jayla's feet were blistered, her hands torn from pulling Elias's stretcher over rocks and dust. The children helped without complaining, even the smallest carrying water or scouting ahead. They had seen too much to be afraid of hard work now. At night they slept under the stars, curled around Elias like a shield. He drifted in and out of sleep, his body weak but his eyes still burning with purpose. Each time he opened his eyes, Jayla was there, holding his hand. "Almost there," she would whisper. "You'll live, I swear it." And finally, on the third morning, the towers of the refugee city rose in the distance. Tall silver walls, glowing beacons, and clean air filled the horizon. The guards at the border raised their weapons at first until they saw the children. One by one, the kids stepped forward, holding hands, eyes filled with dust and hope. Jayla walked ahead, her voice shaking but strong. "We rescued them," she said, "from the mines." The guards looked at each other, confused. "You did this?" She nodded, then pointed back at the stretcher. Not alone. Medical teams rushed forward, lifting Elias carefully. Jayla backed away only when her daughter tugged her hand. "Will he be okay?" the child asked. Jayla knelt, brushing hair from her daughter's face. "He's going to be okay," she whispered, "because we're here now, and he's not alone anymore." In the following days, the story spread. A human had risked everything to rescue alien children. A mother had walked through fire to find her daughter, and together they had lit a flame across the stars. Jayla was given a room in the healing quarters. Small but safe, her daughter had her own bed, clean clothes and warm food. But the first night she didn't sleep in it. She crawled into her mother's arms, curled up close and whispered, "Sing, Mama." And so she did. The same lullaby she once sang to an empty cradle, now sung to a little girl with soft eyes and a steady heartbeat. Days later, Jayla was allowed to visit Elias in the recovery ward. He lay on a soft bed, tubes connected to his side, but color had returned to his face. When he saw her, he tried to sit up. She rushed to stop him, laughing and crying at once. "You fool," she said gently. "You're not allowed to leave just yet." He grinned. Weakly but real. "Did the kids make it?" She nodded. "All of them," she said. "Because of you." He looked away, blinking. "I didn't think I'd get a second chance," he murmured. Jayla sat beside him, placing her hand over his. "You didn't just get one," she said. "You gave them one." Later that evening, Elias was moved to a quiet garden. Jayla and the children gathered around him. Some had made him drawings, others offered bits of fruit or carved toys. They didn't know how else to say thank you, but they tried. He smiled at each one, his eyes shining. When it was time to leave, Jayla lingered behind. She looked at Elias, her voice soft. "There's something I want to show you," she led him. Slowly, carefully to the housing quarters. Inside her small room was a simple crib, newly built by the city builders. It stood near the window. With stars peeking through the night sky, her daughter slept inside it, wrapped in the same old pink blanket, now cleaned and repaired. "She still won't sleep unless she hears me sing," Jayla said. Smiling, Elias stepped closer, his hand gripping the wall for support. "I remember the first time I saw that blanket," he said, his voice distant. She was holding it so tight, like it was her last piece of safety. Jayla looked at him, tears gathering in her eyes. "It was," she whispered, "until you brought it back to me." He sat slowly in the chair beside the cradle, staring down at the sleeping child. Jayla began to sing softly, gently, just as she had in the beginning. But this time she wasn't alone, and the cradle wasn't empty. Elias listened, his eyes closing. Not from pain this time, but peace. He wasn't a hero in the stories, not a soldier, not a leader, just a man who made a different choice, a man who refused to walk away from a cry, a man who held the sky back with his own hands, a man who gave a broken mother her soul again. And in that quiet room, as the stars glowed beyond the glass, the lullaby continued. Soft, warm, filled with life, the cradle sang again, and this time the galaxy listened.